If you've been looking for a way to take your lettering to the next level, or just try something new with your digital art, then you're in luck. Graffiti art can be done in Procreate, and it's a popular art style due to its fusion of creativity, individualism, and an urban aesthetic. Every piece of art is unique, but graffiti has a way of grabbing attention due to its bold colors and impactful style. In this video, I'll walk you through some tips and tricks to create your own graffiti letters in Procreate. From choosing the right font or creating your own letter forms, to finding the right textures and colors to really make your designs pop. Let's get started. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to make some fun graffiti art like this in Procreate. One of the things you want to think about when you're creating graffiti art is that it should have a main focal point, whether that's an image or some text. You can search on Google or even Pinterest for a bunch of examples of this fun art style. There's lots of inspiration to be found, and just make sure that you're not copying anybody else, just drawing inspiration from their art. If you're going to be doing lettering, you want to make sure that you either have or find a font that you want to use, or that you're going to draw the letters yourself. One great resource for finding fonts is this website called dafont.com. We can come in here to the search bar and type graffiti. And what you want to make sure that you do is make sure that it's free to use. If you're just doing this for yourself, free for personal use is fine. If you're going to be sharing it or using it anywhere else, you need to find one that is 100% free, like this one here. So you can come through and just see if any of these spark your interest. If you find one you like, you can go ahead and download it. I'm going to put a link in the description down below for my video that walks you through how to download and install new fonts on your iPad. We're going to start by making a new canvas. You can do any size you want. I'm just going to grab a square here. And you can either draw your art or your letters freehand, or you can start with a font and modify it, which is what we're going to do. I'm going to change this to black. Come over to my wrench in my actions menu, down to add, and choose add text. And I'm going to type R because I'm going to do this monogram, but you could type a word as well. Double tap on that to select it, and this will get you into your font menu. And here is one of those fonts that I downloaded. You can increase the size and come up to the arrow, which is your transform tool. Let's make that a little bit bigger. Now what we're going to do is come to our layers panel over here. Let's rename this reference and drag it underneath this other layer. You can either tap this little N to change the opacity, or take two fingers and tap on the layer and then just slide your finger on the screen. We want to take this down to about 20% so we can still see it a little bit, but we're going to be able to draw on top of it. Now come to this empty layer, and we're going to use an inking brush. I like this one called Syrup. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just trace over this kind of roughly. I don't necessarily want all of the same shapes, but kind of close. Now there's a few different ways that we can modify this font. We can come to our transform tool here. I like to use the warp function here. This gives you a really nice grid. Turn on advanced mesh, will give you a little bit more control. And now we can push and pull, tweak these little nodes to adjust the shape of our letter. Another way that you can adjust your letter is using Liquify. That's found up here in the magic wand in the adjustments menu. Come down to Liquify. I like to use push for this, and you can play with these settings and see what you like. And you can just nudge some of these lines around. If it's a little too thick there, I might scooch that in. Make a little more contrast in the line weight. You can have a lot of fun playing around with these different options. Another thing that I'm going to do for graffiti art is add some drips. You could add splatters, things like that, to make it look more like it was painted on the wall here. I'm going to add a new layer here. And I still have this same syrup brush here. I'm going to take the size down quite a bit. 2-finger pinch to zoom in. And let's just add some paint drips where we think gravity might have taken over. And the reason I'm doing this on a new layer is because it's a lot easier to make adjustments until you're happy with it. You can erase and things like that without affecting your original letter shape. Let's go ahead and get rid of our reference because we don't need that anymore. You can either turn it off with this little check mark, or you can just swipe to the left and delete it. I always like to save a backup copy of my artwork just in case I want to make changes later. I'm going to tap on my R here, swipe to the left and duplicate. Let's rename this Backup, and we'll just go ahead and hide that one. Now, if I'm happy with where my drips are, I'm going to come to my letter R layer, push and hold my eraser, so I'm erasing with that same brush. And then I can come in and clean this up so this all looks like one line. And then we'll merge it when we're done. This is a little trick to kind of keep those lines separate, but looking like they work together. And if you need to add a little bit more there, you can do that too. Switch back and forth between your eraser and your pen to make it look like this was all one line. I really like this syrup brush because it comes out kind of blobby like this, like paint actually would. Now for this one, we're actually going to keep it closed off here because the paint is dripping in front of that closed shape. I think that looks good. We're going to now take 2 fingers and pinch these layers together to combine them. And now we're ready to add some color to our artwork. In order to add some color to this, we are going to make it a reference layer so it will only fill within those lines. Tap on your layer here and choose reference. Then we're going to add a layer underneath. I'm going to go ahead and use this Flourish color palette that comes with Procreate. There's a lot of fun, bright colors in here. If you're not sure what colors to use or which ones go together, I do have a resource for that. It's called From Pixels to Palettes. If you'd like to grab your copy or get some more information, I'm going to put a link in the description down below. Let's grab this bright pink. I'm going to increase the saturation a bit here. And we're just going to color drop that in there. And we just need to add that to this little space as well. Now, in order to get a really nice gradient on this, what I like to do is use a clipping mask. We're going to add a layer above that. Tap on that layer and choose clipping mask. Now we're going to choose 2 more colors. I'm going to grab this orange and a thicker brush. I have a really thick monoline that I like to use. And we'll just Do that in about the top third. And maybe a kind of a purple for this bottom third. And then we're going to use our Gaussian blur to make a gradient. Come back to your adjustments and go to Gaussian blur. And we're just going to slide across the screen till that blends really nicely. Now, if you'd like to add some texture to this as well, you can add another layer with a clipping mask and do that. We don't actually need reference turned on anymore, so we can turn that off. And you can use any textured brush that you have. I have some halftone ones that I'm working on. I'm going to grab one of those, but the air brushes from Procreate work really well for this as well. I'm going to grab this original color here, the main color of the piece, and take it down a bit darker. And let's see what size that is. That looks pretty good. Just kind of brush that all the way across. And take the opacity down a little bit so it blends in a little bit more. The next thing we're going to do is add some shadows and highlights to make this look a little more 3D, like it was actually painted on a wall. We're going to add a new layer. This also can be a clipping mask. It's just easier to stay inside the lines that way. We're going to set the blend mode here by tapping this little N and change this to multiply. And we're going to grab this darker color, this darker shade of the main color again, and take it even a little bit darker. And just grab either that syrup brush again or some kind of a monoline brush. And we're just going to fill in where we think shadows might fall. If my light is coming from here, my shadows are going to fall on this side. So that's where we're going to put some of these. And you can be pretty generous with this. This looks really harsh right now, but we are going to soften this up in a minute. Once you have your shadows drawn in, come back to this layer, and we're just going to adjust the opacity until we have a nice blend there. That's at about 45%. That looks pretty good. Now we're going to add some highlights in the opposite direction. Let's add another new layer. Change our color to white by double tapping close to white. And the highlights are really fun. They can be lines, bubbles, cross-hatching, any kind of fun shapes that you want to go on your paint here. You can be pretty creative with this. It's all down to whatever look you like. And now you have your graffiti art lettering piece. It already looks good, but sometimes we want to take it up another notch. You can add some color and even a digital wall behind this. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to group all the pieces of this so we can keep it nice and clean in our layers panel. Tap on one of these layers and we're going to swipe right on all of the other ones. Tap group and you can just collapse that. We can name this so we know what it is. And then we're going to add a layer behind this. Now let's pick a complementary color. If we have this pink right here, we want to look at something that's opposite on the color wheel. That's going to give it a lot of nice contrast. We'll grab this blue and draw a kind of fun organic shape behind this. Let's color drop to fill that. And then you can adjust. You think you want a little bit more fill here, I want to cover that up a little bit more. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then we can add drips or splatters or anything else to this as well. I think this paint might have splattered a bit coming off of here. Maybe it's dripping down the side as well. And then we can add gradients and textures to this just like we did on the other one. And the last thing we're going to do is add a digital wall behind this. Let's go ahead and group these together. We'll add one more layer behind this. And you can find lots of great background images for free on sites like Pexels or Unsplash. Depending on where you saved it, it'll either be a file or a photo. Come to your wrench right here in the Actions menu and go to Add and insert a file or a photo. I have this kind of cracked concrete wall that I'm going to use. Once your photo comes in, you can just stretch it so it fills the whole screen and adjust it however you need. And if you want to add a little more realism to this, we can actually even put a drop shadow on our paint. Let's open up this background layer. Come to this main color here. Let's swipe left to duplicate. Select that bottom one. We're going to come to Hue, Saturation, and Brightness in the Adjustments menu and take the brightness all the way down. We're basically turning it black. Come to this arrow, which is our transform tool. We're just going to tap a few times off this bottom left corner to just slide that out. See how we're getting this shadow showing up here. And then we just need to blur that. Come to Adjustments, Gaussian Blur, and slide that over a little bit. And then we can adjust the opacity as well. Now you have a completed graffiti art piece. In order to share your artwork, all you need to do is come to the wrench here, over to the share button, and then you can choose how you want to save it, usually as a JPEG or a PNG. I hope that was helpful. I love showing people how to combine creativity and technology on this channel. If you enjoyed it, I would appreciate it if you took just a quick second to give me a thumbs up down below. It really does help out my small channel and just tells YouTube that more people should watch this. If you want to learn some more Procreate tips and tricks, make sure that you watch this video next.